Hi, I'm Chuck Berman. Someone asked me recently how to resize a digital photograph so that they could send it in an email or post it onto the web using Photoshop. Well, fortunately, there's a very straightforward method. This method also works with Photoshop elements. Let me show you. This is an image that has been saved. It's a PSD, a Photoshop document. It's got a couple of layers in it. It's about 57 megabytes of size. It's Adobe RGB color space. A lot of things with the image that do not fit with the web as it stands right now. But how do we go about modifying this so that we can send it? Actually, it's very, very easy. We just go up here to the File menu and go down to Save for Web and Devices. Like I said, this is in both Photoshop and Elements. Well, the first thing that happened here is it says this image exceeds the size that Save for Web and Devices was designed for, and we may have problems with that. The image is just too big. What can we do? Well, let me show you. First thing we do is we click No. Now we're going to go in to the Image menu, and we come down to Image Size, and we're just going to resize this image and make it smaller. As you can see, it's almost 58 megabytes. The width is 3,888 pixels. Well, just as a first step, let's take the width down to something that's a bit more manageable. Let's say 1,000 pixels, and I can just type in 1,000 and click OK. Now, before I click OK, I want you to notice that we're now working with about a 3.8 megabyte image rather than a 58 megabyte image. So I click OK. Makes the image smaller. I'm just going to bring it up a little bigger by using the keyboard shortcut, holding down my Command or Control key and clicking on the plus, and the minus makes it a little bit smaller. Okay, so that solved our major problem in that the image was way too big. It didn't solve our problem as far as flattening the image, but I'm not going to worry about that here. I'm going to go back to Save for Web and Devices, and I'm going to handle everything there. Okay, here's my image. I have several choices of the way I could look at this. I could look at my original image. I can look at my optimized image. I can look at this as a before and after, and you can see here that when I move this around, everything moves at the same time. This is my before on top and after on the bottom. Or I can look at several versions, actually 4 versions of the image, with my original in the top left, and 3 different modifications in image quality at the same time. I'm just going to go back and I'm going to look at the optimized image. And you can see over here that I've chosen JPEG. Now there's a couple of other formats that I can choose, but in this case I'm going to go with JPEG. It's the one that you're most likely to come across on the web. Underneath JPEG is something that gives me quality. I can go up to maximum quality, which gives me a pretty big image. Now I've got to click over here to change that. This takes me up to almost 600 kilobytes. It's still a lot less than it was, but it's still very big. When I bring my quality down, here's a quality of 60, and I can change that either going high, medium, low over here, or I can just come in here and use this slider and bring this down to, let's say, a 30% quality, or a quality of 30. And I can see that there really isn't too much difference in the image. It still looks good. So what you want to do is bring your quality down as low as you can until the image starts to look bad, and then you take it up a little bit higher. Okay, so I'm going to leave this right now at 21. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little button that says Embed Color Profile. Now, there's not very many web browsers right now that can recognize color profiles, but the ones that do, such as Firefox or Safari, actually will render your colors better. Now, you may have noticed sometimes your colors shift when you take an image and put it on the web. Well, we're going to address that right now. We want to click on this box that says Convert to sRGB. sRGB is the color space that is universally recognized on the web. Now, the image in Photoshop was done in Adobe RGB 1998, and that is not going to be recognized with many of the browsers out there. So we want to make sure here that our preview is in monitor color, but we could also take this and look at it in Internet Standard and see how much shift there's actually going to be. Very little shift, and it's very acceptable. Okay. As far as metadata, we can either put none, we can put our copyright. I normally just put my copyright and contact information into the metadata. This is going to increase the size of the image just a little bit, as does the embedding of the color profile, but not enough to really matter. And we can see here that our image, when speaking of size, at a quality 21, we've come down to 71 kilobytes. Remember, we were 50-something megabytes, so we're quite a bit smaller. And this image right now is very manageable. It is still a little bit big. For instance, it's not going to fit in this window. It may fit on a web page, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the image size and I'm going to bring that down a little bit smaller. Now, one of the ways I can do it, of course, is I can just type the number in here, or I can use my scrubby slider by holding my mouse over the W and just making the width a little bit lower, and we're going to bring it down to, say, 775 pixels in width. Now, again, I'm going to click on the image, and what that's going to do is that's going to refresh the image, and here's a very nice image for me to send in an email. It's big enough to see, yet it's small enough so that it will go quickly. And all I have to do now is click Save. So I click on Save, and it asks me, what do I want to save the optimized image as? I'm not overwriting my original file. I'm making a copy, and that copy is going to be flattened. It's going to be a JPEG, and I'm going to put it right on my desktop, and I'm going to call it Big Sur with a bunch of numbers after it, and .jpg. And as soon as I click Save, it saves it. It takes me back to my original image. Now, before I save this image, if I'm going to make any other changes or anything to it, I have to make sure that I resize it back to where it was. And I'm just going to go over here to my history and just go back up here to where it was when I opened it. I can close my history panel, and I'm just going to type a Command or Control 0 to bring it in so that I can see my entire image here. And that's all there is to taking an image and saving it for web.